Je suis vraiment ravie d'être parmi vous. Je pensais que quelqu'un va m'introduire, mais comme ça n'est pas le cas. Et je suis Gabriela Ramos, je suis la directrice générale adjointe de la UNESCO, qui est en charge de la science sociale humaine. Mais surtout, je supervise le travail que la UNESCO fait pour avoir la gouvernance éthique de l'intelligence artificielle. Ça, c'est un mandat qui est de longue date, parce que la UNESCO, c'était l'institution, si vous vous rappelez, quand il y avait toute la découverte du génome humain, qu'on pouvait cloner, je ne sais pas comment on dit, les chips. On a dit, à un moment, on peut le faire, mais est-ce qu'il faut le faire? Et ça, c'est la réflexion éthique. Ils m'ont mis là que je dois parler sur le AI Act, mais mon allocution va être surtout sur la question de la gouvernance de l'intelligence artificielle. Et je ne suis pas sûre, est-ce que je peux passer à l'anglais? It's good if I turn to English? Okay. The question here, and I know that I am at Madi keynote, which is fantastic, thank you for the invitation, and that I am among the entrepreneurs and the people that are developing the technologies. And I have to say that since ever, this has been almost like a technological discussion. We go and see what the computers can do, what do we do about the algorithms, how ChatGPT functions, how generative AI has increased exponentially the capacities that these technologies have to do predictions, to do analysis, how much it is impacting every single step of the way in our lives, in the way we connect, in the way we work, in the way we advance. And therefore, we always focus on the technologies. What is the next wave? How can I be at the frontier? How can I be well prepared? And of course, if you are investing in these things, how am I going to get my returns from the investments that I can make? But because these technologies actually are having such a great impact in our societies, at UNESCO we feel that this is not a technological discussion. It's a societal one. It's a societal one in which we need to answer ourselves if these technologies are going to bring a more cohesive world, less inequalities. Is it going to bridge the gender divide? Is it going to help us with the climate transition? And I have to say that if we don't have an ethical governance, this is not going to happen. And yes, Europe has taken the lead to look at how to control the downsides. And we know what are the downsides. The downsides are the reproduction of inequalities, the reproduction of biases, the fact that not all the humanity is represented in the data that is being used to train the developments, the fact that half of the world is not having access to stable internet services. So you are here and you think it's everywhere, it touches every single aspect of my life, but it's not true, because you still have a lot of the people of the world that has no access to these technologies. And therefore, the question here is how do we ensure that we have a governance framework that first controls the downsides? What happens if you are discriminated? What happens if an algorithm is used and you are not invited to an interview for a job? Or that you are not allocated a fund because somebody decided that in the algorithms you're not represented, or the profile that you have doesn't match? Those are the downsides. Without the question of deep fakes and the question of how much it can impact our democratic processes this year, there are really key concerns in the way these technologies have been developed that can bring violations of human rights and human dignity, that can widen the gender gap. And if we do not put some guardrails, some ethical guardrails, they will just go on. Because at the end, if 80%, and I'm very glad to see a lot of women in the room, but 80% of these technologies are being developed by male-only teams from certain countries. And therefore, no wonder that the biases and the discrimination just find their way in the outcomes of the technology. So what we did at UNESCO 2 years ago, and people thought that we were crazy, we produced an international standard, which is an agreement about 193 countries that committed to ensure that these technologies will protect and promote human rights and human dignity, that will ensure environmental sustainability, and that will deliver fair and sustainable outcomes. And this is like the big picture. The rest, you know it, has to be transparent, it has to be responsible, it has to have some liability regimes if something goes wrong. But the real question is, how do we ensure that there are more investments to develop technologies that deliver solutions than those that deliver problems? And something happened that was interesting, because when UNESCO got this recommendation, all the entrepreneurs and all the governments were saying, don't look at me, because what I need is investments. I don't need rules, I don't need governance, I need more technology. I need more skills, and I need to be competitive. I need to be at the forefront of this technological change. But when ChatGPT came, when generative AI came in November 22nd, and you remember that people started talking about the existential risks, meaning we don't know how much these technologies will increase their skills and their competence, and that we will not be able to control them, how much they are going to be able to disturb the functioning of systems, the air system, the financial sector, the hijacking massively systems that are where our security depend. And then leaders got worried. And that always helps, because then you see that the UK launched the AI Safety Summit. President Biden got the executive order, which was saying only you need to evaluate ex ante all this development before you put them in the market, because what was happening is that you have this big development that they reach the market without the test on safety. And then you got the AI Act. The AI Act is more based in risk assessments, meaning that they are not going to be controlling all the developments, but whenever there is a major investment, a big AI development, it's going to be subject to certain rules and criteria to test the safety and to test that the outcomes are not going to produce more problems than the ones we have. And this was good news for UNESCO, because at the end, we have been saying we need an ethical framework. We need an ethical framework. We need to put people at the center. We need to put human rights at the center. And we need more investments in these technologies to close the gaps and to create a more equal world. To have more women in the sector, to have more women represented in the data, to have more Black people represented in the data, to have indigenous populations also using these technologies, for this not to be for the privileged few, but to actually have access to all the people all around the world. And therefore, this started this movement of looking how we can govern the technologies without inhibiting innovation, how we can create the incentives, because you market actors, you look at incentives. And if you see, for example, what had happened to climate change, and we see that there is this huge investment in renewables, why? Well, because there have been the incentives. There have been some subsidies, there have been some frameworks, there have been some tax credits, and this is the thinking, how we can shape those policies and those interventions in the market that will help us deliver on good artificial intelligence. Now, we created this international standard, but we created something else, and I invite you to take a look at it, because we created a readiness assessment methodology, because you cannot compare Brazil with Malawi or with Indonesia. Each one of them will have very different frameworks, very different societal preferences, and very different law and legislative frameworks. And therefore, we had to know where they are, where they want to go, and how we can help to build the policy tools that they need to deliver on these grounds. And therefore, we're doing 50 readiness assessment methodology, as I said, from India and Brazil, Indonesia, and all Latin America and Africa, to European countries with whom we are working, for example, with the Dutch authority, competent authority, looking at what kind of institutions will be needed to implement the AI Acts. And therefore, the conversation now is not about whether we need regulations or not, but how do we develop them in a way that is creating a safe space for technological innovation, but at the same time controlling the downsides. We also are doing something else, because 90% of these technologies are being done by the private sector. The public sector, of course, has a lot of data, and they are trying to implement, for example, in organizing the health sector or the education sector, or all these processes that can be really improved with artificial intelligence. But we are working with the private sector too. We have a business council that includes Microsoft and Telefónica and Salesforce and MasterCard and Init, Lenovo, LG, very big companies, and they are committing to have their processes analyzed by another tool that we developed, that is the ethical impact assessment. And in this is just a checklist to look at what are the inputs that you are putting to develop the technologies, and if they are safe, and if they are really looking at these questions of not infringing in human rights and human dignity, and how the whole AI life cycle can be protected to deliver for good. And therefore, this is my invitation to you. If you want to take a look at the ethical impact assessment, if you think that it can help you to reflect on how the technology, you are the experts on the technology, but maybe not on the ethics. By the way, I will recommend that you get some ethics experts in your processes. And also, if you have philosophers, because this instrument that we developed, it was not only done by the technologically savvy people, it was done by a group of disciplines, experts, from historians, engineers, philosophers, anthropologists, because it's really the whole society that is feeling the impact of the technological change. And we need to reflect on how much the societies that are being shaped in many ways by these technologies represent the best of us humans, or are just reproducing the downsides. And therefore, very, very clear call to you in your processes, in your engagement, in your looking at these issues, try to think out of the box, get out of the mechanisms of development of the technologies, and think what is the outcome, and how can you engage in this discussion that is about ethics and that is about steering the development of the technologies for the good of humanity. UNESCO is very proud that we are now leading this work. 2025, the whole 193 countries will need to come down to report back what have they done related to the recommendation, and then we will have a lot of information. Visit our webpage, all the information is there. We have an observatory on the ethics of AI that we launched with ITU and with the Alan Turing Institute, and we're putting there all of these analyses, all of these elements that I hope will be useful for you. And it's very interesting to be here because today in the morning I was with a big event in UNESCO that is Women at Dior. Surprise, surprise. They asked me to talk about artificial intelligence. Everybody's thinking what is going to happen with the labor market, what is going to happen with the skills, what is going to happen with my job, what is going to happen with the gender equality or not. And at the end, the main message that I deliver there and I deliver also here, it is about us. It's about us and how we steer these developments to deliver for good. So this is my message, and I hope it was loud and clear. Thank you very much.